So welcome back to the Redacted Culture Cast. We are once again on the road, but we have from time to time the opportunity to visit people. And today we're in we're in your AO. We're in your area.
Yep.
So Ethan, you've been on the show before. Would you introduce yourself one more time?
Just Ethan Walters, I guess more well known as Gypsy Walters, but I'm just a illustrator gun guy, kind of just hanging in the shadows of the industry.
In the shadows. For an industry that likes to pride itself in mystery. It's a bit rare. But yeah, so we've gotten to know each other for a while, and I wanted to have another conversation with you on the show as we get to talk about maybe some industry things, some culture things, and some lessons that we've learned along the way. But as the show has continued on, I'm very thankful for the fact that we get to just have good conversations.
Yeah.
I think across the industry as a whole, there is this presented side of being on social media, being in a public eye that has to be a little bit performative, and sometimes people develop personas for a good cause.
Yeah.
But then when we sit down with each other, either as friends or as colleagues, we very rarely talk about barrel length or
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. But rather we talk about things that we find to be right and true and good, or the things that are really important to us. And so I appreciate having that opportunity. So before we turn it into a little Swedish rosy-cheeked embarrassment, we can just jump right into it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can't believe that was almost 50 episodes ago.
It was, yeah.
Which is nuts.
Yeah, I did not expect to be have this many episodes out by this time, but even from my side, it's encouraging to see that as I continue working on it, the work becomes more fulfilling because now I keep being able to build a little bit more of a foundation on what I'm focusing on.
Right.
I remember it almost back to being in college. The first semester, I felt completely like a stranger in a strange land. And part of it because I was older. I was 25 when I went to college. And so I was the only one who had a beard. My parents didn't show up to drop me off. It's
Right.
oh my gosh, what the hell's going on? I'm a veteran. I've got this combat experience. But then the other part of it was by about a semester, maybe 2 semesters in, I really caught my groove. And just writing was going better. My courses were going better. My relationships with my professors was improving. And I'm hoping to be able to continue to recreate that feeling even for myself as I continue on in this show.
I definitely think you are with the show, because you're rolling now, and you do the things with the guest, which is great. But what I've found that I appreciate a lot is just your quick 20-minute segments, your insights. The last few that you've done, I've really liked and have listened to, which will kind of tell you something because I don't really listen to too much. But yeah, I really liked kind of what you're doing with those, and you're not only kind of going over industry stuff like you are with guests, you're giving a little bit more of you and your thoughts out there that sometimes can correlate with the industry, but for the most part, it's just kind of your thoughts, and I appreciate seeing that too.
Mm-hmm. So from your perspective of when we refer to the industry, the culture, my perspective of it is that it kind of had a border for a while where you're either in the industry or you're outside of the industry. And now as we talk about culture, even then, or as we have conversations with each other, maybe it's what Dirty Civilian is doing, maybe it's what even Mike Jones is doing over at Garand Thumb. It seems like we're moving away from kind of this centralized inside group to a much broader platform.
Yeah.
And it's almost dissolving into America as a whole, almost like the new America.
The new America. Yeah, I definitely agree with that too, because I've recently found Dirty Civilian and really loved and appreciated kind of what they've put out so far. And yeah, and I kind of have been seeing that shift in the culture, so to speak, as where you're involving the culture, but you're integrating the community aspect side of it, which I really like.
Community can be a bit of a vague term, and when you think of a community, what is it that comes to mind as an ideal? What would you want?
I think kind of just showing Like, hey, look, cool, we're both like, okay, me and Drew are both gun guys. Cool, that's really awesome. But communally, we're both kind of homesteading.
Okay.
We both have, like-minded thoughts about what's going on in the world. We're just all kind of I think more community as to like-minded individuals. Kind of, I mean, obviously, if you get a bunch of like-minded individuals together, then you have a community of such. And I like that that it's kind of going that way. It's different. In a way, it's a little bit more personal. Maybe because now I have a lot of property and I'm homesteading-ish and doing kind of that stuff. So now seeing other gun industry people who are doing the same, I'm like, I fuck with that.
It's been like an increase in a focus on responsibility to something that you have like authority over. If you own land, you have authority over that land,
Yeah.
so you have responsibility to it. But then being a part of community that seems to be so much different is that like I think we're yearning for, and this is not exclusive to gun culture, but we're yearning for community, and it's almost like we don't have the tools to do that anymore. We're not really sure. We're almost like back to not pioneering with land, but pioneering with relationships.
Yeah, definitely.
Like we're gonna stumble, we're gonna make enemies, we're gonna fall, but we're gonna keep picking ourselves up and trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and you'll meet a few along the way who don't go anywhere, stay by your side. So it's like, yeah, I think it's definitely doing that, and I'm here for it.
Because you've lived in different parts of the country.
I've lived all over the world. Yeah,
You've lived all over the world.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that aspect. I mean, that's where we get the Gypsy moniker.
Yep.
Yep. And you've lived around the world, so you've had to kind of reestablish yourself in multiple places.
Yeah.
Is there like an inverse to that, where even as you've moved around, there's been certain things that stuck, or?
Yes and no. Probably not as much as I would have liked, especially after this last move. It was probably one of the more harder ones. I was definitely all in the beginning, and then it also didn't help that we moved right before winter, and so then you're locked in for 7 months in a cabin like The Shining, and you're just like, oh crap. So yeah, that didn't help too much, but yeah, there's been people who stick around, people who fall off, but yeah.
When you look for something that's like-minded in another person, what are you looking for? And is it something that is more intuitive and you see it when you feel it? Or is it something like, I know I'm looking for that in somebody?
I think it's more intuitive at first. Like, it's like if you want to come shooting with me, like feeling you out kind of sounds bad, but it is like I want to get to know you a little bit. I want to see kind of who you are morally, perhaps as a person, because then that will determine the latter. And then, of course, it's like, okay, like, if you're into having your own garden, if you're into the kind of same tactical stuff that I'm into, if you have night vision, like, if we're on the same kind of level as in terms of skill, like, that all really comes secondary, as opposed to like, okay, I want to know who you are as a person before I even give a shit about who you are as a shooter, a gardener, what have you.
I have a bit of a connection to that in the sense of, while I think that getting into Ranger Battalion had, and this is a long time ago now, like I'm talking about this in the long past, and I've gone through multiple different vetting situations, there is very clearly a sort of hard line that people have to pass. And some of those are like, you have a PT test, you have to score so high. That if you don't pass the PT test, you're not passing selection. You have to be able to show basic competency with certain skill sets, whether it's land navigation, marksmanship, fieldcraft, even if that's not too ambiguous. In Ranger School, it's like battle drills, basically. You have to be able to perform an ambush, you have to be able to react to one, you have to be able to do these kind of things and not shut down in the stress. But then there's a side that's, I don't know if the word subjective would be completely correct. It's more, you have to have character. They have to be able to look at you, look at how you operate, and be able to trust you. And I think for me, when I went into Ranger Battalion, I was expecting the selection process to be like my rite of passage into being a man. And whether or not I would have articulated it back then, I don't know. But now I can see that even as a child or as a young, as I was 18, I was expecting it to be like, I graduated, now I'm a person and I get to do all these things. And I was disappointed by the attitude of battalion that when I got in, I was told, you never make it, you have to prove your worth every day. And I thought, incorrectly, that was solely like a skill set thing. And rather, what they were looking for, whether or not it was correct or whether or not they were even holding the standard correctly, I have to work on articulation on that one. It was, I have to know every day when you show up to work that you want to be there.
Yeah.
And when we have friendships and when we have relationships, whether it's a work-related thing or just as people who know each other, I think that's still the case.
I would agree, yeah.
Even though it's less defined, it's still more significant. And we can tell stories of like being betrayed by somebody. We know what it feels like when things go negative, but how well do we define the long game of developing relationships with one another? I don't know if we're actually as deliberate about that as we want to be sometimes. At least I have gone through phases where I'm more deliberate and less deliberate. And when I'm less deliberate, it usually creates a fertile ground where the problems start to pop up. When I'm coasting with my friends.
Right.
When I'm letting myself do things that don't hold or raise my, let's call it position as a deliberate friend. I'm just kind of like, well, you're my friend, so you're going to forgive me for being an asshole. And it's kind of a goofy standard, but
right.
I noticed that getting out of the military, I was expecting there to be a moment where like, oh, I don't have camaraderie anymore. But then when I opened my eyes past my own feet, I recognized that was ubiquitous across, especially the culture, but men particularly. So like they wanted to be a part of something. They wanted to have friendships, whether they called it tribe, community, culture, or whatever. But like no one said, well, then be deliberate about it. Like pick and choose who are your friends.
Yeah.
And that's been an odd process because by picking my friends, I respect them more, not less. And I think within gun culture, because it's less like suit and tie, office, businesses up front on every stage of analysis.
Right.
We still function on relationships with the people.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like a lot of my relationships as they are with people who are in the industry, it is more who they are as a person and the industry second.
Yep.
Like, cool, Tony, like, we're super, super good buds or whatever. Has nothing to do with the fact that he's like SF. Like, cool, man, that's second. Like, care about you first. Yeah.
The relationships that I've maintained are less dependent on pedigree and more on time that I've spent with them or not spent with them, but still like that deliberateness.
Yeah.
If you treat my friendship as casual, it's harder for me to invest in it. And then I've made the mistake of investing into people who are not willing to invest back.
Oh, 100%.
That's a weird place to be.
It is, and it's even worse when you're investing in someone and then they just take. It's like almost like a bad relationship. It's just like, all right, man, like we're done. And at least that's to the point I've gotten now. Like when anyone just, oh, you have a hookup or you got this or that, I'm like, we're done, man. Like, because you kind of immediately just showed your hand, but also like rude, like.
Well, we work to maintain our relationships in this industry. We have to work to do that. And it's not a negative thing. It's just reality.
Yeah, no.
And when somebody comes along and expects to, because they have a relationship with you, to have access to that,
Yeah, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around that. I think I'm just not. I'm not that person, but I guess I wasn't raised to be someone like that.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's just I don't know. It's like, oh, he has it, why can't I? Or this or that, and it's like, well, I don't know, man. Like, there's a reason people get further in life and in business than you. Like, private can't just walk in the door and be like, okay, I want to be a sergeant. Like, no,
No, it's
you have to
not.
earn that shit.
Yeah.
And it's the same with clientele or connections.
Yeah. When you hear earning it, what do you think of, especially within the context of our milieu, our culture, because it's not very clear.
I mean, I can really relate it to like the tattoo scene where it's you gotta. So I did my apprenticeship for a year, and then at the end of the year, I got a tattoo machine tattooed on my knee, and it says paid your dues paid. And I kind of look at everything like that. It was the same thing when I was initiated to like being a Freemason. I couldn't get any Masonic tattoos till I was a Master Mason. So once I earned that, I got Masonic tattoos, and I earned it. And there's something about earning it. I mean, no matter what it is, I think that you just get that sense of gratification knowing what went into it, whether it was hard, whether it was somewhat easy, whether it was the hardest thing you had to do in your life. Like, I earned that. So I think when people come in and they immediately want stuff that you've earned, it's like, back of the line, buddy. Like, it's just not how it works.
Have you ever had an experience where you wanted to earn something but were denied the opportunity?
Yeah, no, I have a couple times. I don't think I'll really go into what they were, but yeah, it's not a good feeling, and it's kind of one of those things where like you just kind of give and give, and and there's nothing in return. So you're just like, okay, like, well then what am I doing? Like, I want to be here, I want to be utilized, I want to learn, or I have this grandiose vision for what could be with X, and then just kind of getting denied that or strung along. It's just like, okay.
So there's no set standard, or what standard is set is not like followed through. I can think of it that as one way. I can think another way is like, I think that's the closest thing that I think, because I've been struggling with this lately, is to try to think about like what we talk about when we talk about gatekeeping, because it's like, it's not the same thing as having a standard. And I mean, I did an episode recently where I was talking about gatekeeping, and there was a point to it. But when I step up to the plate to go try to prove myself within a standard, and am denied even the opportunity by factors that not only do I not have control over, because that wouldn't be the same thing. It would be more like denied the opportunity despite that I have the factors that I have control over in control, but it's something like a bureaucracy. They just, we don't have enough numbers for you. You're not on the list to try out because we've reached our numbers. It's like, well, what do I do with that?
Yeah.
And I think this is an opportunity where like we as citizens of the United States have a particular responsibility to ourselves and to one another, because we're not existing in a single bureaucracy. The military has an easy example of that. Like, it has to meet its objectives.
Yeah.
Or it when operating correctly, it is focused on a mission, it has a target, it has something that it's trying to achieve, and basically the process by which people's individual careers rise or fall takes a second place to making sure that gets done.
Right.
And then team players and people who are a part of the mission get to see that and acknowledge it. And at least I can look at it and say, well, it wasn't in the cards for me because the timing wasn't right.
Right.
Maybe I joined too late. Maybe I was born too late. I didn't get to go on the missions, whatever. But at least I get to say, that like I did what I could, but the timing wasn't right. However, in our world as citizens, we don't have that same thing as an easy given.
Right.
Right? I don't have a rank structure to climb. I don't have like a deployment to prepare for. I don't have a squad to support in the same way, but we still hunger for that same thing. Being a part of a team, being
Yeah, of
involved
course.
in a community, having something to struggle for. And as an optimist in this sense, I think we're figuring that out. And the people who don't want to own up to the plate are falling away.
I would agree with that. Yeah, definitely. No, and I definitely feel the struggle aspect because I feel like I feel like I'm at a point in my life, and now I'm kind of old enough to say it, but like that's just kind of that's life. Like not life is struggle, but like in a way it is. Like and going back to like the earning it, it's like I mean, man, I dropped out of high school and have been on my own since I was 16. Like everything I have, I've earned. Like, and even more so with my hands because, you know, I'm an artist for a living. Yeah, and so like I take great pride in at least that. Like I don't take pride in much. I'm not really a fan of pride, but that is one thing that I like. You will never take away from me that I built this. Like I did this. It was me. You know, the whole like, and I don't know if I talked about it on the last one too. Just like the coming from nothing and building everything is just there's nothing like it. Like and like I said, it's earned and yeah, it's weird that we're all. I feel like we're all kind of in it together, and the fact that we're all just trying to figure it out individually. Like whether it's life, whether it's the military, whether it's this, like we're all in it together. Like we're all trying to pay our bills. Like that's it, man. Like none of us is really any special than the other one. You know, we all put our underwear on the fucking same way. So it's like, hey, why, you know, less bullshit and more like, cool, man. I noticed a couple people on like Instagram are like, hey, like if you ever have like questions about anything, like just message me. And I feel the complete same way. I'm like, yeah, man, like less what there was a quote. It was like less gatekeeping but more like how you doing or something like that. But it's like, yeah, like if you got a question about something, just ask me. Like I'm gonna tell you. There's no state secrets with me. Like if you're having problems with X, hey man, cool, like this is how I experienced it and this is what I did and it worked or it fucking didn't. But no, I definitely think there just needs to be a lot more of openness and just like, what's the big deal, guys? Like, come on. Like, we're all just on this rock together, figure it out. Like, if I can help you, cool. If you can help me, cool. Like, but let's just keep going forward.
Yeah.
Let's not lose ourselves in the weeds.
Well, let's not lose ourselves in establishing a hierarchy that has no foundation.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
Or that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, like in a competition, if we're shooting 3-gun, like it matters to me that I'm the better shooter.
For sure.
Because I want to be the best. That's why I'm competing in the arena. And there are things that we compete with one another on that are official and unofficial. But it's not always that way. Not everything is, vying for status.
Yeah, not at all.
So
That's still a big thing I see in the community or culture. I feel like it's trickling out maybe a little bit. But it might also be because I've cut any of that out that I see. But yeah, it definitely doesn't seem so much more status as more like, I don't know, kind of what are you going to do with what you've been given? Like I've been struggling with that with like my personal Instagram. It's like, okay, I have X many followers. I think it's like 45,000 or something. It's like, what am I going to do with that? I post cool pictures. Okay. That doesn't bring anything to the table. At least not in my eyes. Artwork, cool. You get to see what I'm doing. Like, you probably see less than 1% of what I'm doing, especially artwork-wise, on like online. Like everything I'm doing is, private or for companies or stuff that, you'll see it if they release it and I repost it, but it is very, very different. But yeah, it's like, okay, you've been given I think Travis Haley has it the right way. It's like you've been given a platform. Like, what are you going to do with it? I believe, I don't know if it sounds cheesy, but it's like, I think, if you've been with great power comes great responsibility, and you should like use it for good, use it for knowledge, whatever you want to do. So that's what I've been struggling with, is just like, all right, what do I want to do? Do I want to put more of myself personally out there? Do I want to put more of my writing out there because it resonates with people more? Like, what do I want to do? I don't want to just keep posting pictures, because to me it doesn't matter. Maybe to some of my followers it does. That's cool. But yeah, it's like, I think we all kind of have a responsibility to do that.
The social media aspect of it is a conversation that comes up all the time, because it's like, social media isn't real life.
It's true.
But I know it's not real life.
Yeah.
And I know it's not real life, and I can entertain it. Like, I'm okay using a multicam black plate carrier because it's not real life.
Yeah.
Right? And mature, like, let's just call it mature audiences know that. And at the same time, I still want to create something that's, it's cool.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like, I don't feel like when I'm posting anything that I'm trying to do it to like show off.
Yeah.
Which is dangerous, because I've seen myself do that and gone, I don't like me that way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's like, sometimes I think when I see something that you put out or something that somebody else puts out, whether it's Spiritus or Haley, or whether it's somebody, Bargain Bin or something like, I really like the work they put into that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had an idea, they figured it out, they captured it, and then they presented it. And they're like, it can sound a little, let's call it blasé, but it's like, no, I like aspirational content where someone's doing something rad.
Yeah. Yeah, I like rad stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't turn me off. It's not like, oh, he's just flexing. Because, I mean, that shit's obvious.
It's so blatantly obvious these days, yeah.
And the best ones that I've seen are people who are flexing in a way that's self-deprecating, in a funny way, where it's like, you're making a joke about flexing while flexing, and I can laugh at it.
Yeah.
And it's like, congratulations on your achievement. That's funny. At least I don't feel like you're talking down to somebody, because no one needs that shit.
Yeah, no, there's no room for that here.
Yeah, but that's even in then, it's like that's the quickest way to spoil a good reputation, is to turn it into something shitty.
Yeah.
I'm in charge here. Like, okay, dude, thanks. The guy who has to say he's in charge is never in charge.
100%. Yeah, and I mean, social media is so weird. Like, we're projecting our lives through a 2x2 square. And I've never really found much in that. It's like, all right, cool. It's a cool way to communicate with people, because all of my friends live all over the world and country and stuff. So it's like cool to see what you can do, but it's definitely kind of become its own thing, to where now it's, I don't know, just a tornado of shit.
Mm-hmm. From your high seat of authority, sarcasm attached, where have you seen places where like the Instagram, the social media, the interaction with people has moved away from just generic marketing to like something else? Like, I've seen it. You see this kind of Ouroboros secular relationship where like a trend will be created, companies will jump on, then people will follow the companies, and then they'll try to recreate the company. Yeah. And like it's a cycle, it circles, and I'm not the philosopher to like diagnose all of it, but what I oftentimes see a symbiotic relationship growing out of what used to be like, we're over here, you're over there kind of thing. Like, I like that aspect of what we call social media, because it turns it from a broadcast on a television to like kind of this back and forth between
Right.
people. And some companies have done that really well. I think Lead and Steel has done a pretty good job of that. I mean, they're an optics manufacturer,
Okay.
but I mean, there are other examples too. Like, make no mistake, it's not the only one, but just how they have kind of gone back and forth between them, what they're building as far as optics, and then how they're dealing with, they're living within the culture. It's just like, I appreciated them. I never feel like I'm being told to buy something, but I like it.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I kind of put my money where my mouth is on that. Is like, I support the people who I support, like, and like the homies or brands or whatever you want to call them. It's like, no, there's a reason why I follow under 100 people, like, because I only support a few, because I really believe in them. I like their content, I like their message, what have you. I pretty much always pay, like, and I support, like, and that's how I show it. So
Yeah, and that, I again get to be the optimist and say, I think that's happening more, not less.
I do think it's happening more. Yeah.
I think it's happening more, not less, and it's happening a little bit more naturally than I expected.
Yeah, I think that's really through like a lot of these people kind of getting together, like in person, like having these little meetups or shoots or what have you. I guess I mean, it's still kind of, in a way, it's still the same, like if you go to SHOT, but yeah, having these kind of offline meetups really kind of helps strengthen the bonds between those people, and in turn, those people's companies as well.
It's much less centralized now. It's not just Browning and Colt and Daniel Defense. It's like there's a million different brands.
Oh yeah.
And a million different people participating on a million different levels, and it's fun. It's fun in its own way. So
I feel like it's interesting though, coming from like 4 or 5 years ago when I started, how little there kind of was. There was only kind of 3 or 4 major kit manufacturers, 3 or 4 kind of either veteran clothing companies or brands. And then now it's like, I couldn't keep up if you tried. Like, it's just so much, and it's just kind of interesting to see that shift go from, a puddle to a lake. And I wonder if that's going to kind of affect, I don't know, like if it's going to be kind of harder to find, not the good, but sift through and see what you like, what you don't like. It's easier when there's only a few options. Now that there's so many, it's like, with me, I'm like, what's the point? I'm an old man in my thoughts where I'm just like, I follow who I follow, and if I happen to come across someone else, cool, but it's very rare because I don't seek it out.
yeah, I was on a completely different thought line. I was on a completely different train about that, because I was thinking about like decentralization is like there's so many more options now, so people are so, we're like, in a sense we're more united, but we're also more spread out.
Right.
And how that goes is like the internet, when it came about, was a slow creep into culture from the perspective of somebody growing up in it, but from outside of my lifespan, it was really fast. And what it did is it created this opportunity for so many different voices to be made,
Right.
so many different avenues to be promoted. And whether that's through the algorithm, whether that's through natural talent, whether that's through artificial promotion, whether that's through all these different factors, you have now no longer the convenience of relying on something to provide that community for you. And the positive side of it is that there's so much more, let's just say there's so much more communication, there's so much more integration, and there's so many different more ties. It's not so centralized.
Right.
But at the same time, even though it's not so centralized, now it relies on the individual to have much more cognition into how they make their decisions, how they discern between A or B,
Right.
how they spend their money, where they're going, whose opinion they're going to value, how they're going to encourage that, how they're going to discourage that. And so in a way, it's kind of like it's a kind of a painful process for myself as a person or for the community as a whole of like, I no longer get to defer to somebody else, but at the same time, now I get to do something. I actually have to participate. And it's that same relationship that goes into, if you want to be a part, you have to pay your dues.
Yeah.
If you want people to admire your opinion, you have to validate it in ways that are more grounded than I served.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, and that comes with a positive side where the stolen valor candidates find themselves very quickly ironed out, where even stolen ideas oftentimes get found out more quickly, or that if your foundation is weak, it's not going to stand up against the struggle.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it can benefit people who just tear things down. For a while, I think it's a short term. It's like candy for breakfast. It's gonna give you the energy. It's gonna give you the little spike, but it's a short lived. Like
Right.
we figured that out, and I mean we as in like we.
Mm-hmm.
There's a natural side to it. There's an artificial side to it as well. So, I mean, there's tragedy that happens out there. Relationships fall apart. People don't figure things out.
Yeah.
But I don't see it as that way all the time. And I like that. I like that it's like, it goes back to the idea of like, we want the adventure of the frontier. There's nowhere west to go.
Right.
It's the people now.
Yeah.
It's literally the intellect. Like you have to engage with ideas, values, and there's no escaping to the frontier.
Right.
And that can be hard.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
But I've even seen that as in the transition from like the prepper to the homesteader.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an aesthetic difference.
Right.
Like the prepper thing was very isolated. The homesteading thing is curated peoples. Where like when I'm going to rely on you for milk and eggs, you better be reliable.
Yeah.
Whereas the prepper thing is like, I'm going to do it all by myself. I'm going to live in a bunker in the basement. It's like,
Right.
no.
Yeah, and I guess that's where that community sense comes in.
Good times.
Yeah, we got an egg lady. She comes and delivers like 3 dozen a week.
Don't tell the IRS.
Won't tell them we have raw milk either.
Is that illegal here?
Yeah.
Oh, funny. Is it anywhere where
It's
it's...
so silly. Utah, you can. You could in Utah.
Yeah?
Yeah. You just had to like, you could get it at like Whole Foods or something. You just had to like sign a little waiver almost when you got it.
Yeah?
Like no big deal. But like here, everyone's like super tight-lipped. Like they're like, like shh.
Oh, that's funny.
It's like, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
We have something in common, you and I.
Yeah, in the dark future of America, people create crime syndicates to disseminate healthy food.
Hey, I think Drew did it in his Dirty Civilian video where he was buying raw milk and he gets busted. I'm like, yeah, that's so silly. Such a silly world we live in now.
Yeah, that's something I'm not really here for.
No.
I'm not really about it. I think we can win. Like even if you wait, the way that you look at it, more and more states are moving towards constitutional carry, and I think that's just going to be a consistent movement.
Yeah. I think there's some states that are doing it right, and there's some states that are dissolving into oblivion. But I don't know. I found that. I mean, obviously, you can't rely on the government or even state authority to some degree, because I believe it's too large. I believe when it's a small town like where I live, like that's where change can happen. That's where you see your tax dollars going. That's where you see your votes going. You can actually have an impact, as to where I believe everything else has just gotten too big, too out of control, too corrupt, what have you, to where it's like, yeah, oh, ATF put out a new ruling. Who gives a shit?
I think there's an argument that might be said that is less, actually, it's less stated than it is implied, that the size and scale of, let's call it the empire, is something that can only be managed by experts. And so expertise in politicking, which on the one hand makes sense in a world where we are so big. Like, you have to be able to be an expert within the bureaucracy at something. But at the same time, we see the other side of it, where the dark side of that expertise is disconnection from society. Is that you don't have the consequence. You are stripped of the knowledge benefit of having skin in the game. Or like, whether or not I make this decision correctly doesn't have any consequence for me, or worse, I have manipulated it to only benefit me, and because it benefits me, it must benefit everybody else. Whereas in reality, the opposite happens. You
Right.
get your $1 million paycheck, but everybody else has to pony up the money to make that possible.
Right.
And the pathway to smaller government is not voting it out and abolishing it. It's decentralizing across like communities. To the empire, decentralization looks like collapse.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that before.
But the bureaucracy of it can't withstand, it can't even manage the decisions that it's supposed to manage anymore, because it has no connection to the consequences of the people who are responsible for it. Or worse, it just becomes a hotbed for corruption and only rewards further corruption.
Right, which is kind of seems like where we're at.
I think maybe it's a natural course in the history of humankind. It feels.
Oh, I definitely think so. I mean, it's like, the Romans at the end of their empire got obsessed with gender and identity and stuff like that. And was it like every 300 years empires fall? It's like that history. It's like, yeah, well, whether we're there or not, it's like, it's history for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Even when it becomes just obsessed with identity.
Yeah.
Like, a dark parallel would be the gun culture would not survive if it was solely obsessed on identity. Whether that identity is you're a ranger, you're a SEAL, you're a Green Beret, you're a GB guy, you're a civilian, you're a manufacturer, you're whatever. It's like when we only center our, not even achievements, but our culture, because we are responsible for building it, around those identities, I think it's the same thing.
I would think so too, yeah.
It's the gender thing, it's you're basing your identity on something as ambiguous. Achieving something like Ranger Battalion is more solid because there's actually something there that required work and time. You don't just get to like say you're a thing.
Yeah. Also, the Tower of Power is way cooler than a trans flag.
I don't have one. Don't rub it in.
It's all right.
It's okay.
But no, yeah, I totally understand that.
And then as we go into like the other one thing that I've struggled with, and like that I've enjoyed our conversations about, is that when I say struggled with, it's like it's this internal demon mocking me in my head of like, you're not doing enough. You're not worthy of the team. You're not playing heavy. Your opinion doesn't matter about anything. This like, I've heard it described as, what does he call it? The imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I've heard it described as other things. And like, one thing that I've been encouraged by is I've seen people, whether it's Sean Ryan, whether it's Colin Underdahl, whether it's like people whose opinion, who I actually look up to in some stance, coming out and saying like, yeah, I have these things.
Yeah.
And then they work. When they talk through it, they get somewhere.
Yeah.
And my little demon in my head goes something like, those who can't do teach.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not instructing, I'm just talking.
Right.
Those who, you're not, your opinion is not it's not even your opinion. The work that you've done is not worth the team because you're not somebody else. You know, I was a ranger, not an NSW guy. Therefore, like, it doesn't matter. You were a ranger, you're not anymore. So it doesn't matter. And it's weird how that game, that voice plays in the head. And then you hear it outside of like it being projected onto somebody else. You're not allowing me to be part of the community because I wasn't a ranger.
Yeah. It was definitely like that a lot more for civilians a few years ago. Where it was like, no, you're a civilian, you completely get overlooked by someone who has military experience, whether, you know, even if it's not, you know, SF. And it's been nice to see that change, but that imposter syndrome's there for, I think, a lot of people, whether they want to admit it or not. And I'll admit it. I think I've said since day one, I'm like, I'm just a regular guy. Like, nothing special. Cool, I can draw. That's it. Like, just because my PVS 31s, my SCAR 20S is not my identity. And I know you've talked about that before too. It's like, yeah, I feel we all have a level. I think it's once you kind of reach a certain level, like whether, you know, it's you with, oh, I used to, you know, be an editor at this big magazine. Oh, I used to be a ranger, stuff like that. It's just, it's not, crap, I'm losing my train of thought. What was I going before that?
Well, we were kind of, I was talking about like, imposter syndrome.
Right.
And then how...
Oh, once we start gaining notoriety to a bit, I think that's where the imposter syndrome really kicks in, because all of a sudden you have a little bit more eyes on you, and they whether you're thinking of it or not, or expecting something. Oh, I expect such and such because he was a former ranger. And I think just not getting really caught up in that and just being like, cool, man. Like, I always kind of have the mind, I'm like, if I never get to go to SHOT Show again, cool. Like, because I went. Like, I got to go. You know, I always wanted to go. And I've gone quite a few times now, and it's like you only kind of get one lap in the arena, you know, if it's your time, it's your time. But I'm definitely...
you said you only get one, you said lap in
one lap in the arena.
One lap in the rep.
Yeah, so if you're fortunate enough, I think it was this comedian, Chris Stefano, he was talking about it. He's kind of, I think he was describing how he sold out Madison Square Garden, and he was talking to his dad, and he was saying, I'm going to try to sell it out another day. And his dad said, why? You've already sold it out. You only get one lap around the arena. You can't hang out at that altitude forever. And I found it to be very, very interesting because kind of at the time, you know, I was working with some of the, you know, top brands in the industry, and it was like, hey, like, this might be your one lap in the arena.
Well, we're back in the game. We're back in the saddle. We're going to try this again. Let's just jump right into it because, you know, introductions are not going to work. We've been fighting through technical difficulties, but that's what happens when you travel. And this is a moment where I get to say thanks to those who are supporting us. That money's going into making sure our equipment is getting better. So if you want to jump on that, we really appreciate it. That's over at the locals page, but it's in the description. People know where to find it. That being the case, so we left off on a kind of an important point where you had said a line that was, everybody has, what is it, a day in the arena.
You get one lap in the arena.
One lap in the arena, and we kind of were going all over the place. Can you kind of rebuild that real quick?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years in the lap, but like you can kind of only get to that once. And I think it kind of correlates with, you know, you only get one go at this life as well. But yeah, everybody has their day in their sun, and that's another one is, you know, you all get your 15 minutes in the sun, you know, 15 minutes, 15 years, whatever. It's the same kind of analogy.
So I've always seen that as a bit of a challenge, saying you don't know when that day is going to exist. I haven't always. I've just grown to see it as, I don't really know the day where all of my training, practice, discipline or lack thereof will be tested.
Right.
The easy, again, the easy transition is like you go on deployment. You're not going to be in a gunfight every day, but the one day you do is the one day it matters.
Yeah, it's like carrying a gun, conceal and carrying, and then you don't do it the one day, and that's the one day you go to the supermarket and get shot up.
Or I think it was Christian Craighead who brought it up really well, where if you're carrying a handgun or you're carrying a gun for self-defense, but you are not like mentally prepared for it, if you're not
for sure.
willing to use it, then the day that it happens and you're not there, you will not live up to the standard. Which is
It's the classic you rise to the occasion of your training, right?
Yeah, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training.
That's right. That's it. Yeah.
But even outside of just this hyper microcosm of like a self-defense scenario, I think we find ourselves frighteningly reminded in our current time that if we live for that moment of self-defense, we betray every other day of our life. But you could go down the legal aspect and you could go down all these other kind of, in my opinion, kind of like half committed challenges to its legitimacy, and forget that like you're not carrying a handgun for the day that you defend your life or your family's life. You're defending your family's life because that has meaning. And so the day, like the every day everyone has their lap in the arena sometimes draws fear, because I don't know when it's going to happen, and I don't know the exact environment that it's going to take place in.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's going to be in my business when something catches on. I don't know if it's going to be in my daily work or my writing or my whatever I'm doing at the time, and whatever I'm aspiring to in that sense. And so like the sense of fear is that I've already missed the boat. Like that lap, my lap in the sun was 10 years ago in Ranger Battalion. And it's over now. And the rest of my life is a slow sunsetting period of descent into madness. It's a very different way of thinking about it, but
It is different.
it kind of haunts me every once in a while.
I just see it as, the obstacles come and you just take them as they may.
Yeah, I mean, even as I was trying to reconfigure everything and getting it together, there's this like Marcus Aurelius quote, "The obstacle is the way." And in the back of there's this, he never lived in a time of computers.
Right.
The obstacle isn't the way. The obstacle is just the obstacle. Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
Just that. But when it comes to things within the heart, within ourselves, that sticks much closer, sticks much more. It's much more tangible. Is the thing that I'm avoiding might be the exact thing I'm supposed to be doing right now.
It's true.
Yeah. I don't even remember now how far we were getting into it, but we did. We talked about it a little bit on how the imposter syndrome is an interesting, the imposter syndrome can have like an element to it where it goes away. But
mine kind of goes away. It comes up around like SHOT Show or like industry days or something like that. When I'm surrounded by people that I consider bigger than myself, if I'm hanging in the office with Travis Haley, or if he shoots me a text, I'm just like, okay, like what? Like who am I? I'm nobody. So that's where it really picks up. Usually, but day to day, it's kind of like, man, I just do what I do, and I don't think too much of it, unless someone kind of shouts it out, like, oh, Gypsy Walters or something. Like, it's really only when I'm in groups or industry events that it's kind of like you have the little imposter devil on your shoulder, just being like, you? I'm like, yeah, I guess.
You don't belong here.
Yeah, you don't belong here. Yeah.
It seems like some people try to bully their way into having a sense of belonging, and it never works out well.
No.
And then others I know too many people who are doing too many good things that all talk about it in different ways. Of like, as gun culture devolves, or not devolves, but dissolves further back into Americana, back into its roots, it's like, I'm not as big as that guy. I'm not as big of a personality. I don't have as much to offer. And we do. But I think it's the process of working through that helps many of us like figure out what we have to bring to the table.
Yeah.
And going through like I'm not doing this, but I can bring this.
Yep.
And
that's a good thing. I'm often, almost any time I open Instagram, comparison is the thief of joy. Basically pops into my head every time I open Instagram. It's kind of like a little reminder to be like, hey man, if this dude has this and you don't have it, like, oh well. I never thought I'd have PBS 31s. But okay, I got that. Like, oh, maybe I'll get a Barrett someday. You know? Like, you just can't. I think that's one thing that's kind of been going on lately with a lot of kind of industry people, is they have been doing that to a degree. They've been either complaining or comparing to who has GP and VGs or whatever. And it's like, don't worry about that, man. Like, that time will come or it won't. But like, why worry about it? Like, why waste any moments of your life thinking about that?
Yeah, like it's an interesting dynamic that you see people, because like the whole night vision thing is such a perfect example, because it's like a status game, like people play with watches, but not the same.
Right.
Because I mean, watch it, like, you don't do things with watches the same way. You go out and you do stuff with night vision, and you go out and play with it, and you go out and do stuff, shoot at night, and drive cars or whatever, and where I think most of the community is at, and I want to encourage that, and this is where like you're at or I'm at, is that I want us to. We know it's true in the sense of like you need certain equipment to do certain things. You can't go parachuting without a parachute. You can't go shoot night vision without night vision. I get it, but there seems to be this barrier on both sides of the people who have it and the people who don't, where we're letting like the equipment get in the way of getting out and doing some more stuff, going out and driving, or figuring out how to do things together. And I have never to this day heard anyone say, oh, we're going to go shoot night vision, but you only have a PVS 14, so you can't come along.
That's so stupid.
No, I don't think I've ever seen that. I've seen people use that as a reasoning because someone's being an asshole. And like, man, but they usually just don't invite him anyway.
Right.
It's kind of shame. With the, I think we lost it in the recording, and that's really tragic. But the closest thing to imposter syndrome that I have in regards to like even night vision and having this equipment and knowing and playing and training and practicing and kind of knowing where my skill set measures up in certain arenas, and that is I get the those who can't do teach mentality of like, it's like this shouting anger of like, we'll see. I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only guy in this position. It's like you'll see some sort of cultural event take place which raises not only your awareness but other people's awareness for things like human trafficking, which I don't want to belittle, but it's like, oh, I can do something about that. But then you're not, and so you get depressed, and then you start feeling like you're not a part of it, and then because you can't be like that person, you have no place in the ecosystem, and then all that ends up making me do is sit in my room and be alone, and kind of mope.
Yeah.
Like I'm breaking out of that.
Yeah, you have to. You'll just be drug into that pit of sand.
What is it? Ask not what you can do for the gun culture, or not? Ask not what gun culture can do for you. Ask what you can do for gun culture.
Yeah,
Stealing presidential lines like it's money. I like it. I like where we're going. I think that optimism is something. It was who's it? It was Mike Glover was talking about Ernest Shackleton on how optimism is a moral virtue. And I was like, well, I mean, not really, but I get the point. Like, we cannot let our imposter syndrome get in the way of going out and doing stuff with other people.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, when I have meetings with these top companies, or if I get invited to these crazy shoots in Vegas, it's like, okay, like, let's see how it rolls.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever? How have you managed expectations as you've been moving through like the last 10 years?
It's a beautiful thing about me, Forrest. I don't have expectations.
I am jealous of you.
Oh man, I was raised to not have expectations. So I really don't. I think there is some level at some point with like my art, when I'm hired to do something, that there is a level of expectation, of quality of work, that, it holds me accountable. But in terms of something like that, I just let everything play out. Like, hey man, here I am. This is me. That's about it. It's a blessing and a curse.
There's an element where I can see jealousy in that, like not from you, but from like, man, I wish I was that carefree all the time.
I'm not too carefree, but I'm very, just, all right, let's see what happens.
It's good to see that we're not all entirely wrapped up in the drama.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't do is drama. There's just no room in my life for that.
Yeah, well, it tends to isolate itself anyway.
Yeah.
I haven't seen drama be very successful.
Yeah.
I mean, it catches attention, but there was a mentor who said to me, it's like, be careful who you pay attention to, because you can spend a lot of time I'm paraphrasing him pretty poorly again, but you can spend a lot of time entertaining people who will never add into your never pay your bills is how he said it, but he meant it in the way of like, you can invest a lot of time into people who will just never respond, never it's not even just never pay back, but like they'll always criticize you and never give the next degree of value.
Yeah, I think we scratched on that earlier, where we talked about investing in people and getting nothing in return. Like, that happens, and you just can't. I think identifying it quickly and then just cutting it out. That's how I do it, anyways. I'm like, okay, like you bring X to the table, or you're my friend, or this or that. But the second, you kind of start going down that road, I'll cut you out like cancer. Because I just refuse to have any part of that in my life. Nope.
Not the way to do it. Well, hopefully this third recording will take. I know
Third time's a charm.
to fight through it, and we're probably going to put together another one before the day is long. But do you have anything you want to close with as far as remarks? Garand Thumb likes to do dad advice. Everyone else has their own thing.
Interesting. I don't know. Since we were on the topic of being carefree, maybe just kind of let the chips fall where they may. Stop trying to control everything. In the great words of Tyler Durden, just let go.
Wasn't Tyler Durden the bad guy?
It depends who you ask.
It's not a great mystery, but that is one of the good things about it. There is no real antagonist to the story in that one.
Nope. The antagonist is yourself.
Well, it's the battle we all must fight. There's no way out of it.
Nope.
Well, that being the case, I'll close then, and we'll move on, and we'll wrap up, and we got other things that we're trying to do tonight, so. Well, then, for those who are listening, again, thank you very much for jumping onto this conversation on the Redacted Culture Cast. if you want to support the channel, you can head over to redactedculture.locals.com. That's us. That's me. That's where I'm going to host more discussions in there, and then it's going to be the exclusive content. It's going to put back there, so we make sure it's worth your time. That'll be like forward warning on certain things, and if you're on that list, you're going to get exclusive invites to events that we put on. So thank you very much for your support. The money goes into making sure we can try to make all this equipment work better, because it's been a challenge as we've been on the road. But this is just the first conversation that you and I are going to have for some time. But Ethan, thank you very much for coming on. Thanks for hosting us, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, me too.